Good evening and welcome to CAN TV Community Forum. I'm your host, Karina. Joining me today is Pam and Lan Rickert, the founders of the Eco Justice Collaborative. They're here to talk about the important work of their organization. Welcome, and welcome to both of you. It's a pleasure to have you here. Tell me a little bit about the Eco Justice Collaborative.
Well, Eco Justice Collaborative is a nonprofit organization. We strive to raise public awareness, public consciousness about the impacts of lifestyle choices and public policy on the earth and its people. As you may have heard, the United States uses about 25 to 30% of the world's resources. We produce about 25 to 30% of the world's waste. We produce 30% of the CO2 emissions in the world, which contribute to global warming. And yet we are a relatively small percentage of the world population, less than 5%. So all of this has a great deal of impact on the world and on the people in the world. We're trying to open up dialogue, trying to create space for understanding the linkages between how we act and how that affects the planet and the people, and produce lifestyles that are more sustainable, use resources more sustainably, are more just, and create a better world for our children, our grandchildren, for the future. So we really do have a great footprint on the earth, and so that's what we're trying to work with.
And I suspect everybody who's watching this show this evening is saying, but yes, we have to consume to live, don't we? It's true, we all do. The question is, how much? Are we taking more than we need, and are we taking more than the planet can support? And one of the things we like to do to bring people into this dialogue is to use a measurement tool called the Ecological Footprint. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
No, I'm not.
Oh, it's really an interesting tool because it's a quiz that we can all take. You can go onto our website and access this really easily, Ecological Footprint. And in a matter of 10 minutes, you get a brief, broad brush understanding of your individual impact on the world. And what you'll find when you do a little bit of reading here and take that quiz is that worldwide, if you take the worldwide average, we would need 2 and almost a half planets to support the consumption patterns of the world today. And if you translate that to how we live here in the Western world, in the U.S. in particular, we would need 5.3 planets to support what we consume and the waste that we generate in 1 year. Clearly, this is not sustainable. And I think the challenge is to, 1, help people become aware of this phenomenal impact, and 2, then to find ways that we can individually and collectively work together to reduce our impacts. That's where the challenge comes in. But while we're working through this challenge, we also think that people will find that quality of life increases, and the dynamic that ultimately results is one of more just living, where we're living in harmony with the earth and we're minimizing impacts to people on the planet.
Well, you said a couple things that really strike me. Just living. It sounds like, well, just living. No, you mean just living.
Living with justice.
Living with justice.
Everyone.
And that another thing you said that I really would like to hear you talk about in specifics is that if we make the changes that I think you're going to talk with us about, that it will actually enhance our quality of living. Is that what I heard you say?
Yes, we believe that it will. I believe personally that we're on this fast-paced life track that I think doesn't nourish us. Part of our story, and maybe that would be of interest to your audience, is taking us from that place to living at a slower place and living a bit differently.
How did that happen?
Well,
Dear.
How did that happen, honey?
How did that happen? Well, about 10 years ago, we lived very differently. We were in a different place. We were the owners and principals of a land use and environmental planning firm in the western suburbs. We had a very large home. We had actually another home in northern Wisconsin where we would travel every couple of weeks and retreat, if you will. All of the accoutrements of a prosperous, privileged lifestyle. And then about 1996, or thereabouts, late 90s, we began a series of what we'd call trips of transformation. The first trip actually was something that Pam took to El Salvador and Honduras.
I would bet you that I'm not the only person in this room, as expanded by your audience, who's ever had this nagging feeling about, I'm being called to do something. I don't know what it is, and I don't really know why. I had a friend who took a trip to Latin America and came back radically changed and said to me, you're feeling it, it's time to go. And this trip of transformation allowed me to take myself out of my comfort zone, put myself in another place with another set of experiences, and meet people I never would have had a chance to meet, and experience life through the lens of their eyes. And you know, I mean, maybe this sounds rather trite, and I don't mean it to be sounding that way, but it launched me on a different life's journey. To go to another place and experience people who were working in maquilas for slave wages, making the clothes that I was buying at major discount outlets, and hearing their stories about how they couldn't organize, how they were treated abusively, had a major impact on me. Looking at the natural environment, you know, and realizing that my understanding of rainforest, as I thought it would be in El Salvador and Honduras, was a total myth, and that 95% of the rainforest was gone. And then hearing it was gone, it was logged, paper, other consumer goods, certainly furniture, etc. Major impact on the country ecologically, and major impact on the people who had relied on living on those lands with the resources that were removed. So I think it took us to a place of saying, okay, how are we contributing to the impacts of people and planet, and what are we being called to do with our own lifestyles?
Yeah.
So,
We followed up with that with several other trips.
thank you.
First to Chiapas, Mexico, and very southern state of Mexico, very poor area, yet very rich in natural resources. And we talked with organizations, we spoke with campesinos, with indigenous communities, and realized that the influence of mega projects, Plan Puebla, Panama, for example, with a whole group of mega projects of transnational corporations coming into the area, using the resources and in many ways exploiting the inexpensive labor and the effects that it had on the people and the environment. We subsequently went to Colombia, and our eyes were opened even more widely. The violence in that country, and much of it focused on the victims who are the poor, the people who are trying to live off the land and often displaced, many times violently. And when they return, for example, in some communities, the forests are gone and there's industrial agriculture in place. So we came back from Colombia and we said, wow, you know, we've done some very interesting, some very good work, we think, in land use planning, environmental planning, but we are ready to make a change. And so we sold our business to our 3 senior people, and over the course of several years, and this is really a journey for us, we sold our home in the western suburbs. We actually, one of the hardest decisions was to sell our home in northern Wisconsin. But it has allowed us a great deal of freedom to do things that are really meaningful for us. And so we've now created the nonprofit called Eco-Justice Collaborative. We spend a lot of our energy and time working on those things.
What an interesting personal journey. Where are you living, though? I hear you sold all your homes.
Oh.
We're doing a show on homelessness.
No. We moved to Uptown, and we're living in a condominium there. And you know, to be quite honest, it was really hard to know where to put us. As we walked through this journey of ours, we found ourselves attracted to the city, and many organizations were working on justice pieces. We attended church in the city, and it became apparent when we began commuting to the city like 5 times a week that something needed to change here. So we decided to look for a suitable location, and you know, the question of where could 2 people, you know, white, middle class, privileged people go and not gentrify was a great concern to us. So we're in Uptown in a building that was already converted, and that was it was a hard decision, but we love it. We love the diversity, and we absolutely love that community. So
Cool.
we're happy
So
to be
let's
there.
talk a little bit then. Let's get down to some brass tacks. You've got the Eco Justice Collaborative.
Right.
You mentioned a moment ago church. I understand that the collaborative is what you would consider faith-based, which is a word we're hearing a lot about lately. What does that mean in connection to the Eco Justice Collaborative?
Good question.
We're faith-based, not in the sense that we're a religious group or connected with a religious group. It's more in the sense that we relate to people of faith and conscience. Now, we come from a religious tradition. We can relate to a variety of religious traditions, and our work as we make presentations, etc., we can bring in some of those pieces. But we're not a faith organization per se, but we find that the vast majority of people are very caring, very compassionate. They have a strong sense of conscience, and part of the disconnect, if you will, is that many of our actions have negative impacts other places in the world, but we don't see those. We are isolated in a way. And so we want to appeal to that faith perspective and that conscience perspective. So,
And also to piggyback on that, we believe that this creation, as created by the Creator, however you want to define that, is abundant, and it will provide for all of us. The question is, how do we make sure there is enough for all, and how do we live more justly so that it isn't this vast disparity of those who have and don't, and those who don't.
I want to hear about exactly what the collaborative does, but first I have to say, and I hope I'm not off the mark with this, you know, as you're talking, I'm thinking about recently, there's been a lot of buzz in the media about Al Gore and about an inconvenient truth, and I see you both smiled. That's a good thing. I was hoping I wasn't mixing apples and oranges.
You're not.
no, not at all.
When the film first came out, I ran to see it and went through a variety of reactions as I was watching, which I'm sure a lot of people do. There's a sense of guilt, there's a sense of responsibility, but it's kind of followed by a sense of being overwhelmed, and at the end of the film, kind of like lost. I left there thinking, okay, this is really horrible. Other than nightmares, what should I do? And then I saw him not too long ago on Oprah. And at the end of the show, there were actually, and I wrote them down, there were 5 things I can do. I can change my light bulbs, I can change my filter in my heater, I can get a different thermostat, and I'm thinking, wait a second. You started out the show talking about that the United States is consuming 30% of the world's energy. You mean if I change my light bulbs, we're okay? You know, I don't know. So I'm hoping that you're going to fill in some of the blanks for us and talk with me and give us a little meat on the subject here.
Actually, global climate change is very much at the center of our work right now. It's one of our projects we're focusing on. From our perspective, the film An Inconvenient Truth is a wonderful film in presenting the issue and presenting the problem, very compelling, and it leaves people with varying, emotions at the very end. Some are, you walk away depressed, what can I possibly do? Others, we've heard, are empowered. We actually show the film and lead discussions around that. I think our concern, though, is that in the end, people are led to believe that they can consume their way out of this problem, that it is not something that takes fundamental change, but
that's what I'm saying.
It's a matter of the light bulb,
I don't have to turn off the lights, I just have to change the bulbs.
Those are good things, but to tackle a problem of this magnitude, we have to go where the most significant parts of the problem are. It's in our energy consumption, our transportation, our electricity production. we believe there has to be a paradigm shift. We have to have a collective change in conscience, which in one sense to me means it's well, much like Al Gore in the movie alludes to the change in perception of tobacco, for example. When I was a young person, virtually everybody around me smoked.
It was cool.
And
sophisticated even,
That's
right?
now there's somewhat of a stigma to that.
Absolutely.
And I think we have to change our collective consciousness about energy use, resource use, and overconsumption, and begin to feel, as we do with tobacco in many circles, this is not a good thing, and we need to always feel like we need to use less and conserve, and not necessarily go to technology as our savior every time.
So what does that mean in day-to-day living? Give me some examples.
Well, I think a good example is the way we eat. And there's a couple of things we could say about that as it relates to the movie, I think. First of all, most people probably don't think about where their food comes from and how far it has to travel. The average meal today travels between 1,500 and 25 miles from farm to table.
2,500.
2,500, excuse me. 1,500 and 2,500, yeah, which is 25% higher, a lot of 25s in this analogy here, than it was a few years ago. So the point being, if you eat more locally and you eat in more season, then you are eliminating the transportation piece of it, or reducing the transportation part. The other thing, I think that if you add the organic piece to it, you are eliminating the use of chemical fertilizers and chemical herbicides, most of which are fossil fuel based, most of which generate CO2 emissions. And again, you're helping the environment. You're also eating more healthy. To do that, we have to support initiatives locally that are actually bringing food closer to home. And there's a variety of organizations in the Chicago area who are doing just that. Some of them are doing that with a justice piece to it as well. They're doing jobs training for the unemployed and underemployed. So you can think about what you eat in that regard, reduce the transportation, do organic, support local initiatives, and actually have a major impact, I think, on the climate. The other thing is the beef we consume. As silly as this sounds, cattle emit methane. They either excrete the waste, which give off methane, or they belch. I mean, they're a major contributor of greenhouse gases. So that's one example about, I think, an easy way we can say, okay, our lifestyles can change in an easy way. They can change today to make a significant impact, I think, on climate.
By eating less beef?
Eat less beef. And yes, that's a good example. And if I didn't say that clearly, I could probably talk a whole show on what it means to eat beef, because it really has a substantial impact on our environment and people too. In Latin America, populations of people are being displaced from their land as the agribusiness comes in and meets the world demand for eating more beef, for example. And then of course you cut down the rainforest, which has another effect on climate, especially when you burn the trees. It's a pretty significant impact. So
these are the specifics I'm looking for. What else? What else does the collaborative teach people about? Or well, maybe we should talk a little bit about the Eco-Justice Collaborative. Is this basically what the collaborative does? Do you go out and educate people? Are you involved in some projects? Give me a little insight into that as well.
We do a variety of things. One of the elements of our program has to do with presentations, workshops. We meet with churches, with schools, with community groups. We can make presentations on things like what is enough, energy, U.S. energy policy, the impacts in the world, on global climate change, on a whole variety of issues. And our presentations are interactive. We like to bring in opportunity for our audience to participate, as well as use different media to work with that. So it becomes hopefully a interactive and enjoyable experience, and understanding how we can make changes in our lives.
And the other thing that we think is important, well, first of all, I believe people learn differently. I mean, if you hear facts and figures, some people are into that. Others are like, okay, I heard that today, but it doesn't mean anything to me, and I'm going to forget it tomorrow. So we like to include art, music, poetry, you know, as ways of conveying these messages, and opportunities to dialogue with one another about where we are in this life journey and what it is we're all trying to do. An opportunity for an informational piece, but then also what I think is most important is to find a way where people feel they can covenant, you know, I'm going to make these changes in the next few weeks, and collectively we're going to make these changes together, so that we are actually on a journey, and this is not an academic exercise where everybody walks away and says, okay, that was interesting, but I'm going to go back and do the same old, same old, same old. So we kind of think that if you have the community support, change is more likely to happen, especially if you experience the impacts in a variety of ways and are motivated to change through the soul, not just through the head.
That leads to one of the other things that we do. If we can find interest in, let's say, 6 to 8 people who want to work together to make these changes, we facilitate what's called lifestyle of enough groups. And we can come together. We've developed a curriculum. We come together as a group on a regular basis, and we talk about these issues and how they affect us. Things like, again, what is enough? If it's a faith-based group, what is the basis of your faith in relating to that concept? We talk about just eating, some of the things that Pam referred to, about energy consumption, about socially responsible investing, a whole variety of topics, and it can change or be modified to fit the group's desires. But it becomes a way to, again, covenant together, realize that everybody's in a different place, and it is a journey. It's not a guilt trip. It's how can we work together? How can we help each other, support each other, and share in this journey?
As you're talking about this, and I'm sure it's not what you came on TV to talk about, but I'm just thinking, so a few years ago you were this suburban couple in the west suburbs, and I imagine all the accoutrements that go along with that. Your friends must think you've gone kooky. Or whatever.
And family too.
And family too. So how do you fortify yourself with that? And I think it's beautiful you have each other. But there's a lot of people, I mean, we are a consumer-driven society with the materialism. You know, talk about faith-based, you know, everybody believes in the green, you know, not necessarily in the God. You know, and so how has this changed your lives as people?
It's still changing our lives, and I think it's exciting. And I think that as we relate to friends and family, what we find is our circle of friends tends to be supportive of who we are and what we're doing. And I think there is also a certain amount of respect that we've experienced because people have watched us through this journey, and they know it's been one that's taken a lot of thought. It hasn't been a casual overnight, we're moving from here to there. It's taken 10 years to be where we are today, and we're still moving. Does it get uncomfortable sometimes? Sure, but every family, of course, you know, I think experiences, you know, some discomfort when talking about issues of challenge, whether it's political, whether it's the way you live, whether it's relational, you know, that's not unusual. But overall, I think we felt support, and it's a good thing. And the farther we go, the more our life changes, the freer we're feeling. We were among the folks who are working, and I'll speak for me here. I had a 70, 80-hour work week. We had this wonderful house in Wisconsin. I brought my work with me. You know, so something was very wrong with that picture. Was I happy having all the accoutrements? No. It wasn't feeding, it wasn't nourishing, it wasn't leading me towards a better quality of life.
And now?
And now I feel really good. I feel really, really good.
There's a sense of a back to basics. There's a sense of having your feet close to the earth as I'm listening to both of you talk, that gives a feeling of being connected. There's a connectedness that I think, maybe you want to elaborate on that.
Well, yeah, as I said earlier, some of these decisions were very difficult to make. I would, if you go back maybe 5 years, the idea of giving up a home in northern Wisconsin, looking over the lake beautiful wildlife. I'm an
Hey,
ecologist
you're
by
going to make me
training.
cry.
I mean, it was something, I don't think this will ever happen. I really
Yeah.
was at a point. And something, you know, as we moved in the journey, we came to a place that said, this is right. This is going to free up time. It's going to free up other resources. It's going to make our life more full. And we did it, and we don't regret it in the slightest.
I think you know it's certainly implied in what you're saying, but bears saying that you certainly could have retired there. You could have sold your business. You could have
Yes,
gone and lived
you're
there.
right.
You could have eaten just food. You could have lived a just lifestyle and enjoyed it and enjoyed each other. And end of story. And yet, that's not the choice that you made. You made the choice to let that go and to dedicate yourselves to carrying the message to other people to have a greater impact. And I think that, you know, I appreciate that. I want to thank you for that.
Great.
Well, we really feel that we are in a unique time in history where I believe that people are, and this is evident by the interest that there is in our work, I think, that people are sensing something is not right with this picture and we need to make a change. How big does that change have to be? How do I play into it? How will I feel about it? Who will support me? Who will walk with me on this journey? And I also think there's a story, if I have a few minutes to relay.
Got about 1 minute.
Okay, it's a good one to end on because I think it's a story that David Corton tells in his book, The Great Turning from Empire to Earth Community, that talks about a caterpillar who is a voracious consumer, who then goes into a mode of chrysalis, dissolves, and there are organizer cells who say, oops, we got to save this mess or it will be destroyed. And they collectively begin to work together, they cooperate, and what happens? A new creature is formed, a butterfly emerges, a creature that lives lightly on this earth and imagines things, I think, and travels miles and lives so differently from its predecessor, you could hardly even relate them. I think we're in a place where we can do that if we have the collective will. I really do. We do.
That's a great story to end on. I like that a lot. Let's invite people to go to your website if they want. I'm imagining that there's more specifics. There's information how to get into an enough group.
We have information on our website. We also have an electronic newsletter that we publish periodically with information on specific issues and actions and ways people can get informed and get involved and become part of this. So.
Excellent. I want to thank both of you so much for being here today. I hope to see you again, and I hope to learn more from you again. Thank you, and congratulations on the Eco-Justice Collaborative.
Thank you so much, Karina.
It's a
Thank
pleasure
you,
to have
Karina.
both of
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Pam and Lan Richard for joining me today. You've been watching CAN TV Community Forum, a community service of CAN TV. Tune into Community Forum for local issues and concerns every Saturday from 8 to 9 p.m. here on CAN TV 21. I'm Karina. Thank you for joining us.